Hey guys, Tomboy61, and today we're taking a look at the best and worst tier 5 cruisers, where we compare them both statistically and then by more of a feel, so be sure to stay tuned for our recommendations. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and talk about our comment of the day. Comment of the day goes out to someone who leaves a comment on one of our previous videos. This one goes out to Uncle Johnny Plays. He says, "We heard your feedback about the U.S. not having concealment, Captain, so we're giving you one that extends torpedo range instead." And yeah, he's of course talking about our brand new American torpedo boat, Captain, where, you know, yeah, it's kind of true. There aren't many American concealment ways to kind of increase concealment. Good news, though, he does have a skill that improves concealment, so that's one thing. But yeah, buffing torpedo range is kind of like the inverse of it, but I like it still in a way just because it does still mean that you are avoiding like the suicide torp way. It just means you're going to have to aim those torpedoes a little bit further ahead than you were if you could get closer. Either way, still cool. I'm excited about this new captain coming. I'm excited to have him as a new commander and see what he does. Anyways, let's now get into the main event, the news, why we are here, the best and worst of the tier 5 cruisers. If you haven't watched one of our best and worst series before, what we do is I've created a giant spreadsheet with all of the tier 5 cruisers on it. If a ship is the best in its category, it gets 2 points. If it's the worst in a category, it gets negative 2 points. Second best, plus 1 point. Second worst, minus 1 point. We tally all those numbers up. We get a numeric score. And then those are our first two that we talk about. And then I go ahead and give my opinion, what I actually think are the best and the worst. So let's go ahead and lead this off with the worst ship according to this sort of algorithm spreadsheet, and that's going to be the Pensacola. Yeah, I know. Kind of surprising, especially because how strong Pensacola is in game, and especially how strong she's been in this previous arena mode. But of course, we're not talking about arena mode, we're talking about standard matches. In this case, Pensacola is a very average ship when you look at its stats. What it is very good at, what it has strengths in, is one, it has the most barrels of any of the tier 5 cruisers other than its sort of sister in the line ship of the Dallas. It has 10 barrels that it can use, and it has a large caliber at 203 millimeters. Like, those are both things that it does well, but it's very middle of the road. It has a middle of the road hit points pool at 32,700. Armor is surprisingly in the middle of the road, though. If you know how to angle with her, and because the front guns are set up with 5, you can punch your way through and still have a decent damage output if you need to properly angle in, and that is her strength. She does have surprisingly strong bow armor for the tier. Where she does end up lacking, though, is actually in the guns and in some of the stats of the gun. Second slowest reload time at 15 seconds. She has a fire rate of 40 shells per minute, 180 time to turn those things around if you need to, 45 seconds. HE damage 2800, which gives her the second lowest damage per minute while firing HE at 112,000. Additionally, her chance for fire is kind of low at 14%, which in per salvo, if you get all 5 guns and fire, is only going to give you a 55% chance of a fire, which is actually the second lowest at the tier. It turns out tier 5 cruisers pretty strong at setting fires. AP damage, while this is usually the strength of the Pensacola, she does 4,600 AP damage, giving her 184,000 damage per minute. It is actually, turns out to be kind of middle of the road as far as damage per minute in the AP firing and AP damage. Secondaries, nothing really to write home. Kind of flat in middle of the road. She has 127 millimeter secondaries with a range of 4.5 kilometers and a reload time of 4.5 seconds. Damage on those 1,800. Interestingly, though, highest chance of fire on the secondaries at 9%. Of course, being an American cruiser, this is the first time where they lose their torpedoes, so she doesn't have any point defense, and this is where she starts to become that sort of long-range battleship type, light battleship class that the American ships kind of spec into. Max speed, middle of the road, 32.5 knots. Turning radius, tightest of any of the ships at 620 meters with a rudder shift speed of 7 seconds. Sea detectability, middle of the road, 11.7 kilometers, detectability by air 7, and the second worst smoke firing detectability at 6.5. Mind you, how often you're going to be in smoke is probably going to be fairly low. But overall, that brings Pensacola to being kind of a middle of the road and actually bottom of the tiers when it comes to being according to this spreadsheet. Now, interestingly, on the flip side, the best ship according to the spreadsheet is the Aoba. Yeah, Aoba, very strong to begin with and very strong overall. We talked about how she is a strong one in our arena breakdown. Hit points 31,900 with a 4% damage reduction on torpedoes. She does have the least number of barrels for her main battery at only 6. Caliber though, 203 millimeter firing range, 14.4 kilometers. Reload time 10.5, which is kind of middle of the tier, but that gives her 34.3, which surprisingly isn't the worst of any of them with her small amount of guns and surprisingly kind of middle of the road reload speed. 180 time is also slow for her, 30 seconds to go ahead and turn that guns, but it's her HE and her just damage overall where she starts to kind of turn up and show up compared to the rest of the ships. 3,300 HE damage per shell, giving her 112,200 damage per minute with a 17% chance of fire per shell. That does give her a 57.3% chance of setting fire per salvo, which isn't the best, but 17% is in the upper echelon and almost the best for chance of fire in per individual shell. AP damage, she also has surprisingly strong AP at 4,700, which is the second best of any of the tier 5 tech tree ships. Damage per minute with that AP is 161,210. Secondaries on her, kind of a mixed bag. She does only have 4 secondaries with a range of 4.5 kilometers. Reload time of them, some of the slowest at 6 seconds. However, she does have the highest damaging per shell at 2,000 damage with an 8% chance of fire, which is second best for the tier. Torpedoes, she has 2 4-barreled launchers. Reload time on them 102 seconds, which is the second worst at the tier. And then, but damage, she is the winner at 16,267, the highest damaging torps of any ship. Detectability range is a mixed bag on those torps, 1.5 kilometers top speed on those torps, 59 knots, and a range of 10, which is the second best as far as range on a torpedo goes. Max speed of the ship, 35 knots, which is kind of up there on the top side of ships. Turning radius, middle of the road, 710. Rudder shift time, one of the best at 6.5. Of course, she is a kiting cruiser, so this is what you would expect. Detectability and overall is just kind of middle of the road, 11.4 for detectability by sea, 6.8 by air, and 6.3 as a smoke firing penalty. Overall, detectability it's okay that it's kind of middle of the road because she's meant to be a kiting cruiser. She's meant to be played at range, and that rudder shift speed is what you're going to be leaning on when you're using her. You are going to be kiting, and that is just the gameplay. So we've covered what the spreadsheet has said is the best and the worst. Let's now go ahead and talk about my personal opinions on what is the best and the worst. And we're going to lead with what I think is the worst ship, and that's La Galissonniere. I know in the previous videos, I think I've been a Francophile for a little bit. I've been really liking the French ships, but something with La Galissonniere at tier 5, she just loses the magic of the French ships. One of the lowest hit point pools, 27,300. Somewhat thin armor. A decent torpedo reduction, 10%, which is one of the better ones for the tier, but that's kind of where her highlights stop. She has some of the best range at 14.9 from her main battery, 9 barrels at 152 millimeters. Reload time, 9 seconds. Shells per minute, 60. A really quick 180 time on those guns at 15 seconds. But then again, how often are you going to be swinging them from one side to the other? I mean, you can use her as a kiting ship, but then you're gonna kind of not be using her speed to the best advantage. There's a lot of complicatedness with La Galissonniere, and I just don't think she adds up to being the best thing. HE damage, 2,200 per shell, 12% chance of fire, which gives you a 64% chance per salvo if you get all of those shells on target. AP damage, decent, 3,300 for her AP damage with 198,000 total damage per minute. Secondary, she has 8 90mm guns for her secondaries. Range on them is the standard 4.5 kilometers with a reload time of 4 seconds. Some of the lowest damaging secondaries, though, only 1,300 as far as the damage goes, and only a 5% chance to set fire. Torpedoes, nothing really to write home about. 2 2-barrel torpedoes, somewhat quick at a 60-second reload time on them, but you only have 2, so you need to be really accurate. They're essentially point defense torpedoes at that point, just because of how small your spread is. You're going to want people to be somewhat close. Damage on them, though, 14,833. Detectability, 1.3 with a torp speed of 60 knots. Range of them, 9 kilometers, which is fairly decent, but once again, there's only 2 of them. So you don't want to fire them very far because they're going to spread, and it's kind of easy to dodge 2 torpedoes. 2 torpedoes are usually kind of easy to dodge. You want that a little bit wider of a spread. Also, the thing that lets her down, the rest of the French ships have excellent top speeds, and she has an excellent top speed when you're running the engine boost. But when you're not running the engine boost, she has the second worst top speed of any cruiser, which is unacceptable for a French ship. You go from having the fastest to the second slowest. Only 31 knot top speed, turning radius 650 meters with a rudder shift time of 7.7, which is kind of middle of the road as far as cruisers go. Finally, let's get on to her detectability stats. 12.4 kilometer detectability by sea, 7.4 by air, and a flat 6 in smoke. Overall, nothing really to write home about there. And once again, the thing that she was the strongest at, her predecessor was the strongest at, being a fast ship, she is no longer. She no longer embodies what was the strength of the previous French ship, and she is just sort of a letdown to me, and that's why she is my least favorite of any of the Tier 5 cruisers. Now, let's go ahead and talk about my favorite Tier 5 cruiser, and this is actually my most played ship in this game, Leander. I know I've mentioned it before, my love for the British cruisers, and this is the ship it stems from. I think when they added the British cruisers was the first time I really got into a campaign, so that might be part of what I'm bringing into this, but I just love the Leander. I have played with her a ton, and looking at her stats, I don't know what it is. I just think she has that special sauce for me as a player. The way that I learned to play her / how I played her was almost as if she is a very large destroyer. I was very aggressive with her, and I think that's because she has the heals, she has the smokes, she has the sonar, so she gives you so much leniency in letting you get in trouble and then extracting yourself from it. Anyways, let's get into her stats. Base hit points, 28,700. Some of the thinnest total armor of any ship at only 100 millimeters peak thickness, which is to expect. We know the British light cruisers have light armor. Main battery, she has 8 total barrels, 4 2-barrel turrets at 152 millimeters, with the lowest firing range of any of the Tier 5 cruisers at 14.2 kilometers. Reload time second best, though, at 7.5, so you are able to send lead down range, giving her 64 rounds per minute with a 180 time of 25.7 seconds. Now, she is a British cruiser, and that means she has no HE shells to fire. That she just has her special AP, which is actually one of the lower damaging AP shells in the game at only 3,100, but not to worry because she's firing a lot of them, giving her a damage per minute of 198,400. Secondaries wise, she has surprisingly decent secondaries. She has 8 total barrels in those secondaries, and they're 102 millimeters. High for the range at 5 kilometers, which is the upper tier of the Tier 5 cruisers as far as range goes. and the upper tier of her reload speed on those 3 seconds, which is, like I said, one of the better reload times. Damage on them 1500, which is middle of the road, with a 6% chance of setting fire. Once again, middle of the road, so she has decent secondaries. Not that you should really rely on them or use them, but they are nice to have in your back pocket. Next, let's talk about her torpedoes. She has 2 4-barreled launchers. Reload time on them 96 seconds with a damage of 15,433. And once again, they are the British torpedo launchers, so you do get to fire them single file, and I love that feature. I love the single fire torps just because the flexibility it gives you in how you want to send those torps. If you want to make some weird menagerie spread, or if you want to send them all in a line, it's really up to you, and that's why I love the British torps. Detectability on those torps, 1.3 kilometers. Torp speed, 61 knots with a range of 8 kilometers. Max speed for the ship and its maneuverability overall, kind of middle of the road, 32.5 knots as its max speed, turning radius of 640 meters, and a rudder shift time of 7.8 seconds. Then onto detectability, and she is one of the stealthiest ships as far as detectability goes. Second best in its surface detectability at 10.9 kilometers and 6.5 by air. And then the best smoke fire detectability, which makes sense. She does carry smoke at only 5 kilometers. So overall, she is just a very interesting package. And as someone who first started playing destroyers, she is a very weird kind of middle ground between destroyers and the rest of the cruisers. So if you're struggling with cruisers and you came from destroyers, I would kind of recommend using Leander. That's the transition I made. That's where I fell in love with Leander, and that's why I still think she is the best of the tier 5s. Like, that's where I'm at on her. If you guys disagree, let me know down in the comments. I'm sure you guys will. As always, guys, if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll be streaming tonight over on Twitch. You can follow all of those links down in the comments below. Guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. See ya.